let's start from where we left off, Rex, about your offerings. So to our members. So if you're going to be offering an evening with Rex, what would your offerings be?
Well, thank you for you both allowing me to do that I love. And as I made reference at the start, I understand in relation to the heartbeat of Rex what a true choice is. What a true choice is. And it's doing what you love. And we do have a tendency, and it's no judgment, it's just what I've observed after 4 years in rehab, working with high-end offenders, 2 years working with youth at risk. And you see some things. You see some things and you see patterns and rhythms. And we're all doing our best, you know, in a world that's changing constantly and consistently. And so the mindful practices, from my perspective, is a way of regrounding ourselves and noticing the operating systems that are associated with either we're not feeling enough, we're not good enough, we're not worthy, I'm insignificant, I'm not perfect. And this audience is simply the orchestra that's playing the drums and the violin, and how we get so wound up with the noise that has very little to do with a true choice. And from my perspective, and again, it's my perspective, many of us attempt to compensate our lack by doing a whole lot of things that hopefully will create some kudos and get a pat on the back. And when we finally get a pat on the back, we'll be worthy of being loved. And from my perspective, just lean into what you love. Just lean into what you love. Just lean into what you love. And when you're creative, when you're in the juice of creativity, you're healing. You're healing. And you may require, when you come up against some contrast, because let's face it, when we step out of our comfort zone, we experience some creative tension. And you may need to apply a certain modality to reduce some of the stress so you can continue to move forward into that you love, to that you love. And so I'd like to offer the group some mindful practices and associated with aligning themselves, a heart-based alignment with that they love.
Oh, that sounds fantastic. So that's fantastic. So what I would like to know, Rex, is a little bit of your background and how you got to find that what you love.
Okay, all right. Well, whānau listeners, put on your safety belt because we might go down to some rabbit holes, eh? And my goal is never designed to shock, but see, there's no shock in it for me. So I just say that's innately, you know, on my heart in relation to what was. So for me, I know my purpose in life. And my purpose in life is to emanate, and model peace and power. But what I experienced growing up throughout my childhood was what I would consider, on reflection, extreme domestic violence. And we didn't get beaten every day. We didn't get beaten every day, but we had the fear of being beaten every day. And so, yeah, I'm under the idea that sometimes you have to get dirty to get clean. And I got really, really dirty. I got really, really dirty. And I reached a point where I was looking at serious prison time, and I'm no stranger to a prison cell. I've had a gang patch on my back. So I've experienced contrast. No badge of honor, I can assure you. But when you're trying to find your way in the world, you attach yourself to vehicles that may not actually be functional, but it's better than not being attached at all. And so my last prison lag, it was quite ironic. People always believed in me, even though I didn't believe in myself. There were so many people. Funny enough, what was the wahine that showed the most attention? And they'd always just see, don't you see what's obvious? And no, I didn't. No, I didn't. And my probation officer at that time, bless her heart, she came to me and she said something that no one ever had stated. Rex, do you want to die?
Great question. Like, talk about
Yeah.
something.
Yeah. And I paused and I thought about that. And I thought, well, no. She said, what are your chances reaching old age based on the way you live? I went, fuck. Because I had more lives than a cat and I was running out.
But you hadn't really thought about it, though, right?
I. And I said, well, no, very slim. And I had just been released from prison and I was going back to court based on a violent episode in the middle of my hometown. And so it was 2 days of being released and I'm already looking at another sentence in relation to my aggressive behavior. And so I went to rehab and pretty much the rest is history, but it was a work, in progress constantly and consistently. But what I found is that I ended up, and we were talking about addiction, and there's so many layers to addiction, their habits. And what I realized was that because I had created so much havoc throughout my life, then I had to repent. I had to repent. I owed society something in relation to the madness that I was expressing. And so I got into being a good boy, a good little boy. I'll be a good little boy, right? But it was still born out of dysfunction, you see. And if you're familiar with the Enneagram, and I highly recommend a gentleman named Chris Duncan, who talks about integrating your shadow. And so I became the helper. I was the one who was fixing shit. But it was all based on me not feeling enough.
Yeah.
So here I was, this perceived ratbag that was breaking shit up. Now I went to the other end of the scale, associated with being a good boy, but it was still about someone patting me on the back so I could feel enough and finally feel loved. That's my responsibility, nobody else's, huh? That's my responsibility, nobody else's. So these patterns started to take place. But then I started to have that civil war where there's a part of me that's a rebel, So here I am wanting to be nice, but don't fucking tell me what to do. Excuse my language, but that's the rawness of it. Don't tell me what to do. So I'm in conflict with myself constantly and consistently. And so that's basically the background of what brought me to this place of presence, mindfulness, and to realize that I don't actually have to do anything other than lean towards what I love. And in doing so, I naturally heal that I perceive was broken in the first place. And it's not. It's not. And you see it so often. And with the two, what the two tends to do is just they constantly pour their heart out in the hope that they will get reciprocated, you see. But they'll always feel disappointed. And then they'll feel resentful for it, you see. But it's the structure they're in. It's not personal, it's just structure associated with compensating for a lack that happened 30, 40 years ago. And forgive yourself anyway. Forgive yourself anyway. So, yeah.
Why do you think a two is never happy with that? Like, that's obviously built into that personality type.
Well, yeah, but what I will want to add to that is that there are two, let's say, two narratives that are playing out. You have the dysfunction, right, with the two, but you also have the genius, and it's about being conscious and mindful of the genius side of the two. And what the two has is the ability to actually innately notice what people need. They intuitively know it. And when they're in their power and in their genius, when they're in their power and in their genius, they are the people that you go to in relation to grounding into that requires grounding into. Quite a remarkable skill, a lot of our caregivers are twos, and there are 9 wounds, so there are 9 characteristics based on this mahi, and I look at it like a wardrobe. So today I'll put this on, but I'm not attached to any of it, you see. But today I'll put on the rebel. I'll put on the rebel today, but I can take it off too. And the genius side to the rebel doesn't feel safe. So the 2, again, I'm not an expert, I'm just very aware of my own platform in this. But a 2 can't look bad, because they don't feel worthy.
Right.
Can't look bad. If they look bad, then how could they ever be loved?
Yeah.
And the 6, the rebel, he don't feel safe. He don't feel safe. And so everything is a threat. Everything is a threat. So they're constantly fighting and resisting anybody who is perceived to be a threat. From my perspective, and it's only my perspective, many of the people in the freedom movement are 6s, have a 6, right? And I'm grateful for my 6. Right?
Yeah,
I'm grateful for my 6.
Because the 6 has got really strong traits, right? Which you need. I recognize that too, Rex, big time. Freedom movement. Yeah. So for those people, what would your advice be in terms of what could they recognize in themselves that they are that, and then what can they do? Because what you're saying is it's good to be aware of that, because even the negative sides to a personality trait has a benefit, because like you say, it keeps you safe somehow. So it will have some positive traits, but obviously negative traits as well. So what advice would you offer to the 6s out there who are doing some amazingly important mahi, by the way, for us, but they need help themselves too?
Well, the thing with the genius with the 6 is that they smell bullshit, and they make great health and safety officers because they can see threats. That's their genius, you see, right? And none of these orientations are wrong, right? None of them, because as a child, we came into the world with wonder and wide eyes, and we realized based on the people who we were reliant on, they had their stuff, bless their hearts, and to actually fit into a groove, into a way of living, we had to orientate. It was about survival. So there was no wrong in it. There's no wrong in it. And if you're not aware of it, what happens is you overcook it and you never experience what you really want. But it's a great orientation to be aware of, because you think, oh, that's where I'm putting my focus, and where would I prefer to have my focus, based on the genius side of that personality. And again, it's like, for me, it's like wearing a coat. Okay, today I've got the 6, or I might have the 3, I might have the 4, and that's what it is. It's the color of our lives. And just to be conscious of that. It's not wrong. It's not wrong.
There's no right or wrong, is there? And the thing is would you say that your experience as a young person in what's perceived as a negative environment, and all the things that you went through in your life, and you're here now, do you feel that has actually been big learnings to make you the person that you are, so that you can actually do more for the world than if you hadn't have had to go through all those hard knocks?
Well, for me, that was how it was panned out. Yeah, that's what it worked. But I don't feel personally, now having some insight and some presence, I don't feel that you have to go through such pain. But we often do, based on, the decisions we make. And I feel personally, Karen and Deb, there's a difference between a decision and a choice. A choice will give you flexibility and expansionship. When you make a decision, you pinch yourself off. And didn't we see that over the last 5 years? There were a lot of people who made some decisions and they pinched themselves off. And there was many of us who made choices.
Absolutely.
That at any given time we could make another choice. And that's the difference. And I, at the start of us kicking around and playing, we made reference, Karen, about a certain situation that happened. A friend of mine said, oh, you know, when all these mandates kicked in and you saw the true colours, saw the true colours of people that you've known for years. And I said, no, we didn't. We didn't see their true colours. We saw their trauma. We saw what they were orientated to, you know, what they were orientated to. And from where I'm sitting, and again, hey, I'm not an expert on this, but I think that was designed that way. There was a level of psychological violence that took place over that period.
Yeah.
And it triggered certain orientations to make decisions that weren't beneficial to the heartbeat of who they really are. And someone said to me, and I believe it was you, Karen, who said, like, how do you know when you're in your power? Well, when you're not feeling like shit, and you're not allowing the circus that's running the show that's related to a narrative that was based on somebody else's opinion who was also in a state of kahipoa, spiritual blindness. And when you're still and you're in your heart, and then you make a choice that's associated with what's the obvious action to take in relation to a life that you love, then you know. And I often, if you don't mind me just doing my thing, it's that when the noise is taking place, and often it's here, and I just place my hand right here. And I breathe. I say, oh, thank you for sharing. And I bring it down to the jawline. And I notice the sensations, and I breathe. Thank you for sharing. And I go down to the throat. Just notice all the sensations, because that little boy's just wanting to be heard. He's wanting to be noticed. Thank you for sharing. And I go down to the heart. We're home. We're home. We're home. So, yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, very powerful. I obviously missed some of it because my computer just shut down randomly, but I got the gist of that, Rex. And it's what you were saying. It's when you were saying about the decisions that were made, and what it was showing was a lack of power, wasn't it, in themselves, because a lack of knowing in themselves. And you're right, we were under sustained psychological attacks, really, with that. And it is not anyone's fault to follow the path of least resistance, and probably even more so, stick with the pack, because ultimately, regardless of what's happened with our individual traumas over life, humans are just programmed to, we're pack animals. We're designed to stick together, and the safest place to be is in the biggest pack, the biggest herd. And right in the middle of it, if you're particularly vulnerable and feel unsafe, you want to be right in the middle of that. So that's what we were seeing and experiencing. And it's all throughout that time. I don't know about you, but I found myself asking, what's the common denominator here with the ones that weren't in the pack, the ones that were prepared to stand outside on their own? And I think there's a number of factors that play into the answer for that. But overwhelmingly, a lot of them are very sure of themselves and don't seek the need to be in a bigger herd all the time or a bigger pack. They're quite happy in them with themselves. And they're quite, they're at peace with what their inner knowing, or perhaps just more connected with their inner knowing. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that? Yeah.
Well, a lot of wise and intelligent people made a decision that I didn't make, and I I'm a little bit resistant and sort of talking too much into that, because a lot of these people have just realised, you know, what they had done, but they had done it under duress, and that was the nature of what we all experienced. And see, I know what the gift for me was that I know what a bully does, because I've been one. And unfortunately, I know, even though I've never participated in this, but I know the patterns of a pedophile. And when you have a pedophile, when you have someone who bribes people with treats, especially children, their goal is to pull your pants down. And we had that. We had that. And so for me, out of fear, most of us made a choice out of fear, regardless if we were admitting it or not. My fear was that I've been controlled. Because, yeah. And just to be aware of that. But I personally feel that there's based on what we're talking about, addictions and stuff, a good friend of mine recently said that drama, there's an endorphin hit within drama. So when you're in this drama, you're getting a hit that you could perceive to be positive. And then you get a whole lot of other playmakers involved in the story that's associated with a lie, but you're getting a hit and you're feeling significant and you're belonging to the group. See, and these are these basic needs that we all need, regardless if you went left or right, regardless if you went, bless our heart.
And the languaging just played on that, you know, you're in a team of 5 million, you know.
That's right. That's right.
That's part of the addiction too, isn't it? That's part of the addiction, you know, how we get addicted to certain things, you know.
Absolutely.
And, you know, fear is, I believe, addictive.
Oh, totally. Absolutely. Hey, and Rex, do you think the rebel really stepped in and saved the day in your case?
For me, it did.
Yeah.
High five, the rebel.
Yeah, got it. Yeah,
for me, it did.
Thanks where thanks is due, right? Yeah, that side of me actually helped me out of the situation.
Yeah. It did.
Yeah, amazing.
I'm going to have to look into this this Enneagram again, because I haven't looked at it for many years. So I'm going to have to re-look.
Yeah, I recommend Chris Duncan, because he highlights the genius side. A lot of the Enneagram focuses on the dysfunction. He highlights the genius side of these orientations.
Right.
So it doesn't make it wrong, you see. Doesn't make it wrong, because it's not. It's not.
No.
But it doesn't always get us what we want. Right? Doesn't always get us what we want.
Any questions, Deb?
I was just thinking. We came to a little awkward silence there. I was like,
my brain just went blip down the Enneagram road.
Yeah, actually, I found it quite curious that we got onto the topic of Enneagram.
Oh, it is, isn't it?
Well, the corridor is around addictions and habits that repeat themselves. And I believe it was Carl Jung that says, if you are not aware of your subconscious, if you're not consciously aware of your subconscious, life will happen and you'll call it fate. You'll call it fate.
Yeah, totally right.
And that's for me, that's something that I'm attempting to be present with all the time. And someone's posed something to me when it's related to our corridor. They talked about drugs and alcohol and how we need to put more money into fixing drug and alcohol. And I says, no, because drug and alcohol is the solution.
It's not the problem. Yeah.
And
it's solving the problem for people, isn't it?
And they looked at me and he goes, what do you mean the solution? I said, well, people are stressed out of their eyeballs.
Yep.
People are not feeling alone. They're
miserable with their lives.
Yeah. And so what do they do to relieve the tension?
They numb it, right? So they can get some temporary relief.
Aye.
Yeah.
So
we were talking to Joanne today, who has basically said, I embrace that and thank it for what it gives me. Yeah, and you see you're echoing the same thing.
Yeah.
This panel discussion is going to be great. I can feel it.
It is. It's going to be really good, and it's. Don't you think if we could find and there are lots of ways of helping those of us who have addictive tendencies, or because I've got another take on addiction and how it is a miasm. So in homeopathy, a miasm is a certain element that runs through the family line. So the theory is that with addiction, there's a syphilitic miasm. So syphilis through your ancestry is coming through and showing up that you have more of a propensity for addiction. And so if we can find solutions for the root of the problem, as in finding things like mindfulness, homeopathy, meditation and things, then people are less likely to carry on with the addiction. Is that something that you would resonate with, Rex?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Yeah. We all have a whakapapa. And that's what it is. You're talking about whakapapa.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, understand. Totally understand.
So yeah. Dear old ancestry.
Yeah. Yeah. That's right. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
That's really interesting, Karen. I wonder though how you could, go back and track that, and how you could find that out. Well, many ways.
Yeah, there's been lots of studies done on miasms in Germany, and that's where that came from. And people being given what's called a nosode, which is sort of like a vaccination, really, of syphilis, and their addictive tendencies go.
That's incredible. Wow. So yeah, but how would they assess that person, that's exactly what they need to do for that person? And what's springing to mind is I wonder if that's something that the genius would pick up for people. Yeah,
it can do. A classical homeopath will go through a 2-hour consultation with someone about their family, about themselves, and there's a lot more to the syphilitic miasm than just addiction, but they would go through that and they'd pick that as a remedy for the client. The way I work with homeopathy is not a classical way, so I tend to use more a scattergun effect, where basically you put lots of remedies in, and if one hits the mark, it works. And so that's where my that's how I work with homeopathy. I don't do the concise. That's not my methodology.
Yeah, but you muscle test for it, I guess.
Yeah, that absolutely can. Yeah, yeah. So
but I'm wondering if your Genius app, your Genius frequency modality.
Yes, you can look it up. You can look it up and see if it's going to be part of the frequencies that are really useful. And it can give you a percentage, but it mainly gives us a percentage in a certain part of the body. So if I'm looking at the liver, or if I'm looking at the thyroid, or I'm looking at whatever, it can give me, and then I go in and I'll go, right, is the syphilis homeopathic? Is it relevant? And it'll give me the amount of percentage of relevancy. And so in the Genius, you're looking for 100% if it's causal.
Right. Yeah. Cool.
And so so I mean, with addiction though, there's going to be a lot more than just that. I would say the extent of the addiction. So because some people might have addictive tendencies, but they might not be so destructive tendencies, because there's lots of addictions, are there not? So so I'm addicted to coffee, so
but see, you're also addicted to health and vitality.
Yes, that's right. I'm much more addicted to feeling good than I am at feeling bad in the morning. So and is that that's an interesting discussion that we might have to bring up in our debates, I think, is what can what can stop the addictive tendencies in its tracks, and it's feeling good, and when you go back you don't feel good, and you have to have I think the reward has to be so good that you're never going to go back. So, for example, like you, Rex, you feeling so good in your own skin that you're never going to go back there, are you?
Oh, I know the cost to it very well.
Yeah.
So,
So, yeah. So, I mean, your cost was life-threatening. And let's face it, most addictions are, aren't they? In one way, shape, or form. I was talking to someone today about sugar, and he's totally and utterly addicted to sugar. He's in complete denial, but I haven't seen him for 6 weeks, and he's gone downhill really rapidly, like really rapidly. And I'm going, if you don't stop this, are you really wanting to commit slow suicide? And you go, oh, I said, but that's what you're doing. You know, you're killing yourself. And yeah, his partner went, yep, you're killing yourself. But it's true though, eh?
Yeah. So it's back to that awareness thing. You got to be aware of, you know, the negative aspects and why you don't want to be doing it, but putting more conscious awareness on the benefits of not doing it. You know, the really
Yeah.
in every moment celebrating yourself and celebrating how great you feel because you're not doing it, and putting more emphasis and awareness on that, but still reminding yourself of the because you know
Yeah.
what you're back on it.
Don't you think so, Rex, do you think, you know, if someone hadn't have said that really life-changing words to you, would there have been anything else that would have got you out of that sort of like spiral of self-destruct?
oh, off the top of my head, that was the you know the crack over the head. And prior to that, I had a lot of crack over the head. But that was the telling point. It was the way she worded it, and because I've never been, because a lot of people telling me that, you know, change your life, you know, you can't continue to do this. I was getting the sermon constantly, and because of the orientation I was in, of course, I'll cut my nose off to spite my face. But it's opposing those questions where it causes you to question. Because you can tell somebody, like, for instance, you know, sugar is going to kill you. But if you're able to pose a question like, if you continue with eating sugar, what do you think the end result will be? You know, so it's just, and that's what she did. That's what she did. That's what she did. And kudos to you for saying that, because some of us don't. Some of us don't. But that's one thing that was just, it just caused me to think, well, shit, you know, I reached the age of 30 and I've been in over 200 violent altercations. Some of them were life-threatening. And how I know that I've been in over 200 violent altercations was when I ended up in hospital with what was perceived to be a very serious illness, and given 24 hours. And every kick, every outrageousness that I experienced mentally, emotionally, and physically went through my body, and I counted it. So I knew.
Oh, wow.
And I'm flapping like a fish. And what the doctor called meningitis, I knew it was trauma that hadn't been released from the body, and it turned out an illness. And you know a lot about that, Deb and Karen. You know the relationship around that. And so, you know, for me, that was obvious. So I knew it. I knew I was running out of lives.
Yeah, that's amazing. Wow, what a story. Yeah, I think it's really what she did at that moment was meet you exactly where you're at. Yeah. Because, like you said, you'd had the sermon time and time again. But when you're receiving the sermon and you're not in that place, you're in that place, well, that would work. I can see how that would work for someone else. I can see how that could benefit people. But there's no connection whatsoever with how it's benefiting me, because you're just not open to it. You don't believe in that for yourself. So she had to come down to where the level you were at and get you to believe what she needed you to believe. And what a fantastic way to put it. Like, when do you want to die? You know, let's let's schedule it in, shall we, Matt Rex? Because you seem to be on the road to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that was extreme, and I
Yeah.
don't feel personally that we have to experience that. I believe that there's aspects of let's say of our makeup, one of the better word, that's starting to actually expand into this level of consciousness. And I can't speak for everybody, but I know that I've become a lot more in tuned. I'm less fearful. And I was never nervous, very little nervous tension around talking to you lovely ladies. Not concerned about getting it right or wrong, just speaking into that was obvious. And I've realized that I can't offend anybody. All I can do is love them, even when I piss them off, because I'm highlighting something within them that they require loving. I can't offend
absolutely.
you. I don't have that
Yeah.
power. You just have a misperception based on a wound that was never given the opportunity to express in the moment.
Yeah. Wow.
Absolutely. And, you know, that sort of brings us to a lot of adults in this world are still very much children.
Me too.
Yeah. So simply because they haven't dealt with those childhood traumas. So they're absolutely still operating as a child in an adult body.
Yeah, absolutely. And what's really interesting, and we're talking about addictions and habits. What's really interesting is that and I've noticed this in playgrounds, but prior to someone being traumatized, they're happy. Prior to somebody being traumatized, they're happy. And when they get traumatized constantly, especially over the sort of a similar situation, they relate being happy with trauma. So let's not get too happy.
Oh, wow. Interesting. Yeah, I hadn't really thought about it that way.
Yeah. You notice that most people are having a really good time, enjoying themselves, and then boom, there's a car crash.
Yeah, and from a subconscious point of view, it doesn't know the difference. It could be the same thing. You're really, really happy watching a movie, something awfully traumatic happens on the movie, and your subconscious doesn't know the difference that it's a movie and not real life. But you can have that same visceral reaction to it. Yeah.
So therefore, Rex, would you say that that's a bit like, so it's a habitual way of being? So if you are really, really happy, do you attract a negative event into your being?
Unconsciously, you self-sabotage your happiness because it's not safe to be too happy. It's not safe to be too happy. It's an assumption that we make in a time of stress and disorder. We all do it. We all do it. And these are not my words. This has been put together by minds that have researched this far deeper than me. It's just what I feel, what I've noticed in other people. One of my superpowers is that I notice patterns. That was the reason why I was able to stand my ground personally in relation to everything that we experienced. But on the same token, I've made mistakes along the way. Bless my heart. Bless my heart. Bless my heart.
Who hasn't made mistakes along the way? Let's face it, Rex, because that's where we learn and that's where we grow, and that's what we as humans do, isn't it? You know, and so
experience.
Yeah, very much so. Some experience more extreme than others, and and that's I sort of like think, well, that's what we've chosen in this world, in a way. So to make, as you said before, you know, to feel relevant, you know, so you know, we act up. It's like a child act up because they're getting attention, and it's not necessarily the attention they really, really want, but they're getting attention, you know, so they're getting attention from their parent. Whereas if they sit quietly and do what's expected of them, they're not getting the attention. And
that's right. And those parents probably aren't programmed to give the attention to the positive behaviors because they don't receive that, and they're just quietly inside going, that's good, isn't that nice? But they're not outwardly, validating that for
Yeah. So it's the perpetuation of familial patterns, isn't it?
Yeah, it really does come back to that. I wanted to, before we, I wanted to mention, like, a lot of people have said, you might hear them, I know it's certainly come out of my mouth many times, is, I think I have an addictive personality, or I have an addictive nature. And that might be simply because I've reflected on family members or extended that also have that trait. And so I've sort of lumped ourselves together as, oh, we've just got, I must come from an addictive family, and I've picked up that trait. But you're right, Karen, because it does come back to ancestral stuff.
Yeah, and if they're also wanting to belong, a sense of belonging, because
Yes.
as Rex mentioned earlier, it's like we're needing to belong, and so therefore we belong to this clan or this group or this.
Yeah.
And so I when I was working in the clinic, I remember a young girl coming to see me, and her mum was with her, and she was anorexic. And I'm going, but you don't need. Do you feel you need to lose weight? And she said, no, I liked my body. I said, well, why are you doing it? And she was at boarding school, and all the girls were competing as to how long they could go without food, because it gave them a sense of power over their bodies as well, but also it gave them a sense of belonging, to this icky group.
Unhealthy.
Comfortable in their uncomfortableness, I suppose.
Yeah. Hey, Rex, before you were saying, you sort of just dropped in there, mine was extreme, and it doesn't have to be like that. I disagree, because just from the perspective that I think it has to be for extreme for every person. They have to hit their personal lowest low sometimes to really learn the lesson and head back up. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, when you look at the quantum field, right? When you look at the quantum field, right, it's pure energy projecting into a universe under the illusion there's a physicality. I'm going left field here, right?
Okay.
And the sole purpose, and don't take my word for anything, but the sole purpose is to experience something. Just to experience something. But what happens is we limit our experience, and we overcook the experience and recycle it. And then we turn around and we label it as that's the way it was meant to be. No, that was just us misplacing our innate nature, which is infinite source. And in the moment of misplacing it, we recycled something that looked hard and felt hard. But from a place of quantum physics, it's just energy expressing itself in a manner that creates contrast. And so I would not say that you're wrong, because what would I know? We're all full of shit until we're not. And and I use that term because as soon as I note that I'm full of shit, because how could I not be? I serve Facebook. I've been brought up in the education system. As soon as I note that I'm full of shit, there's space for something else outside of the shit. And what I've come to understand that our greatest fear is owning our magnificence. And the ego needs to know why it happens. Why? That gives us this perpetual tailspin in relation to removing us from actually who we actually are. Expansion. And a true choice is doing what you love, not trying to heal something that's been and gone, because the body that was abused, this body that was kicked around when I was small, doesn't exist anymore. Doesn't exist anymore. It's an illusion. But the emotions can potentially have a strong hold on that I perceive to be okay and not. And I just put my hand on my chest. I hear you, Rex. Is that you, Rex? Come home to the heart. Come home to our heart. Come home to our heart.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
that's what we needed. That's
We
all we
certainly
need.
do. Yeah.
And that's not hard. That doesn't have to be dramatic. That
No.
doesn't have to be painful. But that's
Yeah,
just my perspective.
Yeah. Don't you think that we as humans are always trying to overcomplicate everything? You know, you were talking before about, you know, people need to overcome the addiction of alcohol and drugs and stuff like that. And we overcomplicate it instead of going, let's just give this person some love and give this person some self-esteem. And, you know, and then I think the addictions could be things of the past. What do you think?
Well, addiction for an addict is a solution. It's a feeling shit, a feeling isolated and alone. So the addiction, regardless if it's food, regardless if it's alcohol or drugs, it's a solution. It has long-term consequences, but it's a solution because they feel so alone. And for me, like I went through, and I made reference before, I had to fix people. I had to fix people who had similar issues. I had to fix them, then I could be worthy, right? And based on the level of drive that I had, I know in my own heart that I had done some good, even in amongst the dysfunction. Right? I still did some good. But it wasn't always authentic, you see, because it was about me trying to resolve an issue that I had an assumption about in relation to myself, the world, and others. Right? So it's a recipe for disaster. But there can be some, let's say, some diamonds in amongst the mix. There are some people who are doing amazing things that are driven by dysfunction. I believe, you know, I mean, and there's a few people who get upset about that, but I feel our All Blacks don't feel enough. I feel high-end achievers don't feel enough.
Yeah.
And what they fear more than anything else is the fear of failure. And if they'd only embrace failure, then they can experience more of that they love and go out and achieve.
Yeah, true. But like you say, it works quite well for them, right? It helps them win.
Well, it works well, yeah, but it works well, but they burn out.
Yeah.
They burn out, and then they have a drunken night where they end up doing something stupid and they pay the price for the rest of their lives. Right? Burn out because it's not authentic, but they're doing great things in a dysfunctional orientation. Me too. Me too. I forgive myself anyway. It's funny.
Yeah.
It's a comedy show.
I knew. Yeah, and Karen, what came up for me when you were saying that is, well, you can give as much love as you like, but am I willing to receive it? You know, comes back to that again. You've got to be willing to receive for that to really have effect.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
Right.
Awesome.
So now, Rex, your Colours of the Heart radio show. We've had the privilege of having chats on and everything else. Can you tell our listeners as to a bit about that and how that came about? Because I've never really asked you how you got into being in a radio show.
Okay. Well, what happened is a friend of mine who was doing live shows at Access Radio, and I don't do live shows, and I'll fill you in why. But he was doing a live show, and he asked me, would I come and be a guest on his show, on his mahi? And I says yes, and he says, "Oh, you've got 20 minutes." So I didn't prep, so I was working, and his guest hadn't turned up, and he was trying to fill the gap. And so I marched down to Access Radio Taranaki and hello, we're doing live radio. And he posed a question to me, like right left field, and I wasn't prepped, but I just dropped into my heart. And the question was, what do you think of COVID-19? Now, we're just in the roles of it. We're just in the roles of it. And again, we're live. And so my response was, I'm not going to tell you, your audience, how to think and feel, because we have a government that does that.
Brilliant. What a brilliant answer.
So I'm not going down there, but this is what I will do. This is what I will do, whānau. Place your hand on your heart. Place your hand on your heart. I encourage them to soften into that and breathe. The first question I posed is, do you feel the mainstream media tell you the truth, whānau? And just let your body respond. And then the second question I posed was, do you believe the government has your best interest at heart? Just let your body respond. And then whānau, you'll know the truth of COVID-19. And the lady, Alexandra, who was managing the radio station at the time, she heard it, and she was very impressed with the way I navigated that question, because we're live. And she offered me, a slot on Access Radio, and so I didn't think too much about it. I just said yes. I didn't, because if I thought about it, I would have, I'd have gone left rather than right. I said yes, I'll do that. And it's just created such a platform for those that have a song to sing their song. And so my purpose in life, I'm very clear of, is to be of service, because I love being of service. That's it. Not because I'm trying to heal something, not trying because I'm trying to fix something, because I'm not worthy. And I mean, sometimes that slips in, but for the most part, based on where I'm at right now, I do it because I just love it, just because I love it. And I've interviewed, I think, 180 people. I've done 180 shows. I've interviewed people overseas. There's been some change makers, such as yourselves. Also, people who have been in horrendous situations and have come out the other end. One of many shows that was so profound was I interviewed my niece, who had been involved in, let's say, a pretty troubled life, domestic violence. And hello, I understand that story as well as most. And she came onto the show and she started pouring her heart out and talking about what caused her to make the adjustments. And I'm holding her hand. She's crying. She's wet in the ground. She's wet in the ground with the tears, and I'm breathing with her, breathing here. And it was just the most amazing show. And it went out and it helped people to think about their situation, And so it just kept on growing and growing, really. 14 countries, I think, listen to it now. So I think.
That's a really powerful story. Wow. That's great. Powerful start. I love how you took not took advantage, but maximized on that moment that would confront most people live being asked something like that. It was a genius response. You totally passed that interview with flying colours. I would have hired you. And another thing you said that I love, you used the term change makers. Yeah. And I adore that. And I totally I thank you for considering us to be in that realm. And it's beautiful. There's some incredible people doing the mahi at the moment. And the mahi they're doing, first and foremost, is within and with themselves. Which is what is enabling them to really step into their power and do that really impactful change making. Yeah. And you're one of them, Rex.
Oh,
big time.
Well, I'm doing what I love. I'm just
Yeah.
doing what I love. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm doing what I love.
Yeah, but it's important what you said about how it's coming from a place of service, rather than anything else. And it's amazing that so many other drivers are actually ego driven. So they're not really about other people at all. But you can't say that wanting to serve others is not about other people, solely about other people,
Well, I'm really selfish. And the reason why I say that is that I believe there's only one of us here. We're just showing up in different shapes. And so when I help somebody else, I'm actually helping myself. So it's a selfish act.
I like that. Well, it's reciprocal. It's a win-win. We should all be aiming for win-wins, shouldn't we?
I agree with you, Rex. I think, having worked one-on-one with clients and everything, I've always felt I've got a lot out of working with every individual, and I learn from every individual, and hopefully they learn from me, or energetically we do a reciprocal energy exchange, even as well as the vocal exchange. We're doing an energy exchange, aren't we? And that's what I really think is so valuable and it's great now that you're doing your healing work on the radio. Isn't that cool?
Very cool. Yeah, very cool.
And I have to say, Rex, I think you have a fantastic radio voice. That helps too.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Lovely.
I appreciate that. Yeah.
Well, that's been magical having you on, Rex, to have this discussion, and I'm very much looking forward to many more of them. As a fellow Food and Frequencies Network member, it's so good to know that you're in there and on tap. And I'm really looking forward to these discussions that we've got coming up with some other people, more on the topic of addictions, because I think we've really scratched the surface here.
I agree.
And I look forward to your Monday share.
Right.
Okay. Whether we call it a workshop or whatever, but I'm really looking forward to that too. So that's be fun. That's really good. So thank you so much, Rex. We really appreciate your time and energy, and for being in our network, because it's going to grow from now. That's for sure.
Yeah. Oh, beautiful. Thank you both. I really appreciate the opportunity. I'm doing what I love, and it's not about getting it right. It's just stepping into that you prefer. Hey.
Perfect way of finishing.
Like my T-shirt says, it's better to be real than perfect, and you are very real.
Awesome.
Thanks again.
Awesome.
Thanks so much.